Hi friends, today we're going to read the book Working in Space and learn more about the important jobs that astronauts do. Working in Space by Ellen Lawrence. Let's read. Time for work. An astronaut on the International Space Station, ISS, puts on a spacesuit. He grabs some tools and clips on rope-like safety tethers. A door opens leading to the blackness of space. It's time for the astronaut to go on a spacewalk. And here's a picture of an astronaut getting ready for a spacewalk. Astronauts perform spacewalks to make repairs to the space station or to set up new equipment. Here are those safety tethers they mentioned. Why do you think astronauts connect themselves to the ISS with safety tethers during a spacewalk? Think about that for a minute. We'll find the answer on page 24. A flying laboratory. The ISS is a big laboratory that's orbiting the Earth. On board, a crew of 6 astronauts perform science experiments. The space station has 3 main laboratory areas or modules. Each module is about the size of a school bus. At any time, the crew may be working on 150 different experiments. On Earth, everything is pulled toward the ground by gravity. In space, everything is weightless. As they work, the astronauts are floating. The ISS is about 250 miles, 402 kilometers, above the Earth's surface. It's moving through space at almost 5 miles per second, or 8 kilometers per second. The laboratory modules are called Destiny, Columbus, and Kibo. Human experiments. The ISS astronauts also carry out experiments on themselves. Why? Scientists want to know how being in space affects the human body. American astronaut Scott Kelly lived on the ISS for 340 days. He carried out hundreds of tests on his body before, during, and after his mission. And here's a picture of Scott Kelly performing tests on his body. Scott Kelly's identical twin brother Mark also took part in the experiments. Mark stayed on Earth and did the same tests as Scott. This allowed scientists to compare the results. And here's a picture of Mark and Scott giving themselves flu shots. Scott Kelly's mission monitored every part of his body, including his eyes, heart, bones, and muscles, studied how his blood was affected by weightlessness, investigated how well his body could fight off illness in space, collected samples of his own blood, spit, pee, and poop to be studied back on Earth. Space gardens. One day, astronauts may fly to Mars or even farther into space. On a mission lasting years, they will need to grow their own food. In the ISS's laboratories, the crew is trying to grow vegetables. So far, they've grown lettuce. The crew ate some of the leaves and sent some back to Earth to be studied. And there's a picture of lettuce growing on the ISS. Like astronauts, plants are weightless in space. As plants grow, they can't tell which way is up or down. There's also no sunlight, rain, or soil inside a spacecraft. Astronauts on the ISS eat lettuce grown in space. Scientists on Earth sent lots of germs to the space station. Why do you think they did this? Tiny space travelers. Everything on Earth is covered with germs and other microbes. Scientists wanted to know how these microscopic living things might survive in space. Samples of microbes were collected from dozens of places on Earth. Then they were sent to the space station to be studied. If these microbes are dangerous in space, it could affect the planning of future missions. The microbe samples were collected from a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil, sports stadiums, the Liberty Bell, and the set of the Today Show. Samples were collected by wiping a cotton swab, like the one pictured here, over surfaces like that Tyrannosaurus rex fossil they mentioned. The ISS crew collected samples of microbes from around the space station. These samples were sent back to Earth so scientists could study them. And here's a picture of an astronaut studying microbes inside a special box in an ISS laboratory. Ready to spacewalk. One of the most dangerous jobs on the ISS is a spacewalk. It takes about 6 hours to get ready. First, an astronaut puts on special underwear in case he or she has to go to the bathroom. Next, the astronaut climbs into a cooling suit that has cold water flowing through it. Finally, he or she puts on a protective spacesuit and helmet. And this picture is of an astronaut wearing a cooling suit. The spacesuit protects an astronaut against bits of flying space dust and extreme temperatures. Outside, it can be 392 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius in the sunlight, and minus 292 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 180 degrees Celsius, in the shade. That's really hot and really cold. Inside the suit, there's oxygen to breathe and water to drink. There's also radio equipment for talking to the crew. There's a camera on their helmet, and a gold helmet visor protects against bright sunlight. A race against time. In January 2016, 2 astronauts performed a spacewalk. Their mission was to replace some electronics on one of ISS's solar arrays. Once in position, the men waited for Earth to block the sun's light. They had just 30 minutes before the sunlight returned and electricity surged through the array. The brave astronauts successfully completed the repair. And here's a picture of an astronaut working on the solar arrays. A spacewalk is also known as an extravehicular activity. For added safety during a spacewalk, an astronaut wears a jetpack called a SAFER, Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue. If a safety tether breaks, an astronaut can fly back to the ISS with the jetpack. So here's the SAFER jetpack, and there's the safety tether connecting them to the ISS. The astronauts cannot do all the work on the ISS themselves. What do you think helps them? The robot crew. The astronauts get helps from robots. The spheres are small, colorful robots. They help with experiments about movement and weightlessness. Astrobee is a robot that can make sure the air is safe to breathe. It can even look for lost tools. And here's a picture of the spheres floating on the ISS and a picture of Astrobee. Astrobee has small fans that blow air to help it move around. Dexter is a 2-armed robot that lives on the outside of the ISS. It performs tasks such as making repairs or changing batteries. And there's a picture of Dexter. In a notebook, design a robot to help the ISS astronauts. What kind of work can it do? What is your robot called? Astronaut chores. Every morning, the ISS astronauts wake up, eat breakfast, and then get to work. There are not only experiments to do, but lots of chores too. All waste, including astronaut poop, must be bagged up and blasted back to Earth. When the day is over, the crew eats dinner, relaxes, and goes to sleep. Then it's time for another work day in space. And here's a picture of an astronaut unpacking a delivery of fresh fruit. Look how those oranges are floating. And a picture of an astronaut unblocking the space toilet. I bet you guys didn't know astronauts had to do chores. Some astronauts become the crew medical officers, CMOs. A CMO might have to bandage a cut, give out painkillers, or even pull a tooth. Astronauts check the equipment that removes harmful carbon dioxide from the air. That's what this picture is. If you could talk to an astronaut on the ISS, what question would you ask him or her? Think about that for just a second. Oh, and here's a chance to do a little science lab. Working like an astronaut. During a spacewalk, astronauts must work quickly and carefully and focus on multiple things at once. Try this test to see if you can work like an astronaut. So you need some Lego pieces, some big thick gardening gloves, a timer, and a friend to help you. Your mission is to build a spacecraft from Legos in 3 minutes. You must wear thick gloves. As you work, you must count backward from 100 to 0. When you're ready to start, ask your helper to time you. After you've completed the task, answer the following questions. How did you feel during the task? Which part of the task did you find most difficult? In what ways did you think this test was like being on a spacewalk? And here are some of the science words that we heard in our book today, so we're going to look at those. Laboratory, a place where scientific experiments are carried out. Microbes, tiny living things. Some microbes cause disease. Microscopic, able to be seen only with a microscope. Mission, a special job or task to be performed. Orbiting, circling or moving around another object. Solar arrays, panels that use the sun to produce electricity. And that's the end of our book. Thanks for joining in.